Hi everyone, I'm Matthew, and in this video I want to talk to you about thinking in first principles. And thinking in first principles isn't necessarily something that's new. It's been around for hundreds of years and used in science and maths all the time. It's taught at universities, schools, it's used everywhere. But it's probably had a bit more of a resurgence, certainly in the wider community, based on the fact that Elon Musk brings it up in a number of his videos, and that's because it's a really powerful technique and a really good way of thinking. And this is opposed to thinking by analogy. So for an example, Elon Musk talks in a number of YouTube videos about thinking from first principles, particularly on, say, the battery technology in Tesla vehicles. So the cost per kilowatt hour of batteries was like $600 US, and they said, well, this is far too expensive for our vehicles. So how can we revolutionize that? How can we change that? People say by analogy, well, it's always been that price, so that's the way it's going to be forever, which is not a very good way of thinking. It's not very good reasoning, because if that was the only way things would reason, then progress would always happen at a very slow pace, and that's not the case. Elon Musk goes back to his company and says, okay, well, tell me what the price of the materials that make up a battery costs. So lithium, cobalt, copper, and such, and polymers to make up a battery. How much would they cost on, say, the stock market? And we can work from there. It turns out that they would cost about $80 for the materials you need per kilowatt hour. So you think, wow, that's quite a reduction in the $600. Now all you've got to do is find a smart way to actually process those materials into the right shapes and then assemble them together to create your battery. And maybe that's actually possible with the remaining $520, and hopefully not to use very much of it, to actually revolutionize the battery technology and make it far cheaper. So first principles thinking is really a way in which you can, not always, but you can revolutionize industries. And Elon Musk has done this in a couple of his other businesses as well. So most notable examples would be with PayPal. So rather than putting in delivery addresses, shipping addresses, all the information, and then your credit card details, you just put in an email. And you can use that same email, the same method on a number of different websites. It's a revolutionary step. So the other one is with SpaceX, and this is to do with space travel and rockets and such. And you think, well, okay, well, why is sending things into space expensive? And you say, well, okay, well, that's because the rockets are a single use only. Well, that's one of the reasons anyway. So Elon Musk says, well, okay, well, why don't we reuse the rockets? That's a revolutionary step, which is spawned from first principles thinking. One of the key things to actually thinking from first principles is to break down problems into things that you know which are certain or extremely likely to be true. I think it's very difficult to know if anything's absolutely true, 100%, no dispute. You want to break things down into their fundamental truths, or what we believe to be the fundamental truths, and then reason up from there. Rather than saying, well, this is the result I got last time, therefore the result is going to be the same this time. That's reasoning by analogy. You shouldn't think like that, in my opinion. Try and think from first principles. Maybe a visual example of this could be with a maze. So you say, I've got this maze here, and I'd like you to get from the start to the end in the shortest possible path. If I give you 10 seconds, you might say, this is my path. So it could be the path that you take, and it could be one of the shortest distances. Then you say, okay, well, why did you go through the maze? And that's purely because you say, well, I've reasoned or thought by analogy that I normally, when I solve a maze, go from the start to the end, I usually go through it. I usually go through it and don't touch the walls and, yeah, find the shortest path. But I didn't say that you had to go through the maze. You could have taken this path instead. It's not a fundamental truth that you have to go through it. The only fundamental truth that I gave you is that I'd like you to get to the end and start at the start. Taking this even further, you could go straight over the top of it. It'll be even shorter than going around the end. It's potentially a silly example, but it's kind of the think outside the box, think from first principles. What is my requirements to get from the start to the end? That's it. That's the only requirements I gave you. You could even say, I'll just draw a straight line through from the start to the end, go straight through the maze. What's to say I can't pass through the walls? Thinking like that is definitely harder. It's far more difficult to do. You need to have a good, thorough understanding of a topic to be able to think from first principles, but it is far more rewarding, and it will be a more successful way of thinking than reasoning by analogy. Thank you everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.